Review of what we did last day in class. So what we're doing is, if we look at the question first before we decide to look at what we actually did, we have a series of overheads, so general bills that the business has, and we need to share those bills out, in this case between 3 different departments, and ultimately from those departments we'll need to attribute bills to the job that we're actually going to conduct. And in this case, this question, we have down the bottom, we have information about pricing up one particular job. So they've called it job number 55. And remember, these are all unique jobs that we're doing. Every job is going to be slightly different, a bit like an architect designing one house rather than mass producing a whole series of houses in a housing estate. So we have some information and some costs associated with this job down the bottom of the question, but we need to decide how much overheads will I send to this particular job so that I make sure that I'm making enough profit, that all of my overheads are covered by all of the jobs during the year. So that's what I'm trying to do. So what we started off was in the middle of the question. You're given information about some of the activities that happen in the 3 different departments so that we can use those to decide on how to share out the overheads. So the last day in class we decided, for example, I started off by saying rent and rates 12 grand. I'm going to share it out based on the amount of floor area. I looked over here and I saw the total floor area is 20,000 square meters. 10,000 of it is Department A, so A got 10 over 20, or half of the total bill of rent and rates. Now I could have chosen something slightly different than floor area. I could have chosen, for example, volume. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. So if I decided that volume is what I'm going to use, well, that means I need to change these numbers. Okay, so I'm still sharing out 12,000. The total volume is 60,000 cubic meters. 20, 20, 20. Well, that's nice and easy. So we've got a third in each. So that means 4,000 Department A, 4,000 Department B, 4,000 Department C, because they're all equal. Is that okay? Now, once you've shown common sense, and Scott, you didn't with your homework last night with 2 of them, but once it's reasonable for me to understand what basis you're using, once it's something that is kind of tied in. And what I'm doing is I'm sharing out all of the total overheads among my 3 different departments. Now, when we think about the nature of the work that goes on in the business, so always we're thinking about this in terms of a factory. Factories can be one of 2 things. They can be labour intensive or machine intensive. And I can presume that everyone understands the meaning of that. Okay, we either use loads of heavy machines, it could be computers and robots or whatever, or we need loads of humans to do the work, and machines support the humans, but it's primarily the human input, and lots of costs and hours of time go in to the humans. So when I'm coming up to price my job, I'll need to share these overheads for the 3 different departments for any one job based on the dominant activity in each department. So can you have a look at the question yourselves and tell me in Department A, what is the dominant activity? Is it, no, but look at the information. Is it labour intensive or machine intensive? So down, what I'm looking at here is down the bottom, so again, this middle part of the question is the information that's about what goes on in the department. I can see for Department A we have 40,000 machine hours and we have 20,000 labour hours. So what's the dominant activity? So machine hours. So I'm going to, for that department, I'm going to say machine. What's the dominant activity for Department B? Labour. And the last one's labour. Okay, now why did I ask that question? Ultimately, if I can just go back to something we did the last day, ultimately I'm going to have to come up with a way of pricing up this particular job. So when I'm coming to price the job, I'm going to have labour for the 3 different departments, okay? I'm going to have materials for the 3 different departments, and I'm going to have overheads for the 3 different departments. I'll add all of them together, I'll come up with total cost. Okay, so I have to come up with a way of sharing out the overheads. So I'm going to share out my overheads. In this case, I'm going to share it out based on whatever the dominant activity is. So for department A, the total overheads, and always whenever we're doing this, I'll just put this on the side, we have the overheads divided by hours. That's the formula that we're trying to use for all of this, okay? So the machine department, department A, the total overheads is 53, there's 34, and there's 26. Now remember, your numbers here, your total overheads, may be slightly different to mine because you've used a different basis of apportionment, but you should get a vaguely similar figure to what I have here now. Okay, so the hours. So we decided that the dominant activity in department A was machine-based, so the total number of machine hours is 40,000 hours. Okay, so that means that if I divide those two, so actually now I'm going to round that to the nearest 2 decimal points. Okay, so that means it's €1.34 per machine hour. So what that means is, if I'm pricing up job number 55, what we have at the bottom of the question, whatever number of machine hours I have in that department, I'll multiply that by 134, and that will give me the share of department A's overheads that I'm going to attribute to this particular job number 55. Okay, so what these things that I'm creating here are the overhead absorption rates. So that's what I'm trying to create here. So labour, the second one. What number should I put underneath in my formula for labour? Have a look at the question. What number of labour hours do we have? We have 50,000 labour hours in department B. So 50,000 goes in the bottom. Oh, so 50. So if I divide those, so 0.69 per labour hour. And the last one then is 30,000 labour hours. So the rate for this one is going to be 26 divided by 30,000. So that is that per labour hour. So when I'm pricing up this job, whatever number of, if I look at just department C only, whatever number of hours of labour are going to be involved in me making up this thing for department C, I'll multiply those number of hours by 87, and that will give me the overheads for department C that I'm going to attribute to this particular job. Is everyone okay that so far? Okay, so you're going to obviously finish this yourselves now in a second, but I'm going to prepare the form for you. So you're going to have to go and read what it says at the bottom of the question and come up with some information for, and you've got materials and labour as mentioned there. This is nice and easy because they've given you the numbers. You don't have to work out how much they're going to spend on materials, how much they're going to spend on labour. Notice department C, there's no money going to be spent on materials in department C, for example. Okay, but when it comes to overheads, when you're going to do your maths, it'll be 134 multiplied by whatever number of hours, in this case machine hours. It'll be 0.69 multiplied by whatever hours for the other department, and 0.87 for the third department. Scott?
See if you're a dominant activity,
yeah.
only machine or labour?
They're the only two it can be.
So say if it was materials, what would you put in for that machine or labour?
Okay, we're not sharing out materials because materials is given to you in the question. When people came in to do this job, I knew, remember yesterday we're designing wedding dresses. So I knew that materials is going to be, based on my experience, is going to take 10 metres of material or 15 metres of material. So that's the material cost. Okay, now you might find that, for example, if I split up the job of making a wedding dress into cutting, material, let's say sewing and finishing, There may not be any materials involved in cutting a wedding dress, so there'll be no materials cost in that department, the cutting department. The assembly department, let's say the sewing department, yeah, I'm going to go through thread and other bits and pieces, so there will be materials there, okay? And I'll obviously have the actual material I'm going to put, that's going to be in it as well. And I'll have other bits of materials that I may have to use in the assembling of my wedding dress. So I may have different materials costs in those different departments. Okay, here we don't know what this business does, but Department A and B, obviously they use up materials as part of their manufacturing process. Department C doesn't need to spend any money on materials. Yeah, Sean?
See the way I find the government activity, the rate for that, would you have to find, see the way there's 50 machine hours in Department A and 20 labour hours?
Yeah.
Would you have to find the rate of labour hours as well?
Don't need to worry about labour hours.
So what to do about them?
Okay. They only gave you those numbers just for your information. You may have used your labour hours in sharing out the overheads earlier on in the question. Okay, so they're just trying to give you an information that might be relevant for you making decisions about how to share out the costs. So this 20,000 labour hours is not going to be used by us in the question for that particular department. Is that everyone okay with that? Okay. So I want you to try and finish this now. Okay, let me just go through it so far. Ultimately, what we're looking for at the moment is total cost. Later on, we're going to add on profit. And we did talk about that last day, and we'll get a selling price. So that's something that we're going to end up having to finish up with. So you're given the labour and materials, you can put them straight into the formula. Can you work out how much the total overheads is? That's what this question is all about. How much are the overheads? And then work out the total cost. Okay? That's it. Off you go.